Some showery rain will move into the northwest. Here, 11 Celsius, but further south, as temperatures are rising, actually, day by day and night by night, so a relatively warm night compared to the last few. And then a bright sunny start for many tomorrow morning. Plenty of sunshine once again across England, Wales, central and eastern Scotland also faring well. I think western Scotland, especially the far northwest and the Northern Isles, likely to see some thicker cloud and some rain at times. But away from here, well, it's looking increasingly warm. Mid to high 20s by this stage, 27 Celsius possible somewhere like Norwich or London, perhaps even 28 degrees. And on Thursday, the heat peaks with plenty more sunshine to come for the vast majority. Away from the northwest of Scotland, mid to high 20s or even 30 Celsius.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV, on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good morning, this is To The Point on GB News with me, Mercy Moroki and Nana Queer on your TV, radio and online. And we're with you until midday today with a show jam-packed of the biggest, full of the biggest stories, lots of discussion, expert guests and our opinions as well.
And as ever, make sure you get in touch with your views on the usual address, gbviews@gbnews.uk. We'll be getting your thoughts throughout the show. But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
Good morning, it's just after 10 o'clock. I'm Tamsin Roberts in the GB newsroom. The Prime Minister has told a cabinet meeting reforms are needed on the railways as nationwide strikes cause major travel disruption across the UK. With 80% of train services cancelled, Boris Johnson warned commuters they must stay the course in the face of what he's calling unnecessary aggravation. More walkouts are planned for Thursday and Saturday, but the knock-on effects will be felt all week. It's after last-minute talks failed to resolve a dispute between unions and rail bosses over pay, jobs and conditions.
We need the union barons to sit down with Network Rail and the train companies and get on with it. And we need, I'm afraid, everybody, and I say this to the country as a whole, we need to get ready to stay the course.
Well, RMT General Secretary Mick Lynch says strikers will overcome whatever obstacles the government puts in the way.
This is a lawful dispute under the legislation that the Tories brought in themselves. And every time we meet the hurdles and break the thresholds that they brought in, they want to change the law again. We've got the most draconian laws in Western Europe and in any democracy, in fact. anti-trade union laws. Whatever they bring in, we'll meet that challenge and we'll continue to campaign, and if necessary, we'll take effective industrial action when we need to.
Well, passengers have mixed views on the strikes.
It took me half an hour longer than normal.
Right.
Had to go via Norwood, and then back into London Bridge.
Right.
So, not that pleased, to be honest, what the strikers are doing.
I get it, especially after COVID. Like, there needs to be some job increases. There needs to be maybe a bit of a pay rise, but if everyone's working from home, there's no real impact. Like I said, my train wasn't busy. We just got stuck outside.
Unions have reacted with fury over a leaked memo which suggests Labour has banned its front benchers from picket lines. The head of the TSSA union described it as ridiculous nonsense by a party that was created by trade unions. Labour has declined to comment, although some MPs have joined demonstrations. Shadow Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Pat McFadden, didn't deny the claim.
I wasn't going to go to one anyway, to be honest, because what I want to see is a negotiated end to this dispute as quickly as possible, because this is obviously causing enormous inconvenience to the public today who need the railways for all sorts of reasons, work and many other reasons, and the sooner this comes to an end, the better.
In other news now, the House of Commons is expected to vote on a Labour proposal to give a parliamentary committee the power to hold MPs to account. It follows Lord Geit's resignation as Boris Johnson's ethics advisor after he was asked for advice on potential breaches of the ministerial code. Labour wants to appoint a new advisor on ministers' interests if Lord Geit is not replaced within 2 months. Children and teenagers from Ukraine could be allowed to come to the UK alone. The Home Secretary, Priti Patel, is expected to announce the move on Wednesday, with the Daily Telegraph saying they'll need permission from a parent or guardian and the Ukrainian government. At the moment, under-18s are only allowed to travel to Britain if they're with or meeting a parent or legal guardian. A Russian man who was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize has sold his medal for £84 million to help Ukrainian children displaced by the war. Dmitry Muratov, a fierce critic of President Putin, was the co-winner of the 2021 prize for his efforts to safeguard freedom of expression. He was editor of a newspaper which ceased operations in March after threats from the Kremlin over its coverage of the conflict in Ukraine. The Duke of Cambridge has signalled the future direction of the monarchy in photos released to mark his 40th birthday. Prince William is pictured with big issue seller Dave Martin, who showed him the ropes in the capital earlier this month. The Duke says he wants to continue shining a light on the solvable issue of homelessness and plans to get his children involved, just as his mother did with him. Crowds have returned to Stonehenge to mark the summer solstice for the first time in 2 years. The sun rose over the stones at around 10 to 5 this morning and won't set until almost 9:30 this evening, giving more than 16 and a half hours of daylight. The summer solstice has been celebrated at Stonehenge for thousands of years, with the stones framing the sun as it rises. This is GB News. We'll bring you more news as it happens. Now it's back to Mercy and Nana.
Good morning, it's 10:06 and this is To The Point on GB News with me, Mercy Moroki and Nana Akweer on your TV, radio and online. Here's what's on the menu today.
Now, the worst rail strike in decades is underway, with widespread disruption to travel up and down the country. Our reporters are around the nation giving you the latest news.
Yes, we want to hear from you as well, our viewers and the listeners, about how you're being affected by these rail strikes. What changes have you had to make to your journeys today and this week? Get in touch and let us know. gbviews@gbnews.uk.
And why are 1 in 10 patients faking sick notes to get their children out of PE? We'll be talking to a charity worker to get our children more active.
Yes, and Prince William turns 40 years old today. Happy birthday, of course, to our future king. Our royal reporter Cameron Walker will be looking at how William has been promoting the causes he cares about.
We have all of that coming up and much more across the programme, so you can get in touch in the usual way.
Yes, and first, Nana's going to give her views.
this the start of automation? My dad always said, nah, make yourself indispensable. It's a lesson I took to heart. Stand out, make people see that without you, things simply don't work as well. A great motto for life, but it comes with a warning. If you don't try to punish those that rely on you by, say, withdrawing your labour for whatever reason, be warned. There's always someone or something else waiting in the wings. There's always somebody else, hungrier, younger, fitter, and potentially better, desperate for the opportunity. One man's rubbish is another man's treasure. In the case of the rail workers, this will come in the form of a robot, a computer, automation. There are a few reasons for these strikes, but the ones that I keep hearing repeatedly are obvious. Pay and conditions, safety and jobs. Right, let's start with pay. We are all now well aware that the average salary for a rail worker is well above that of many others in the public sector. Yes, we have spiralling inflation and there may be a cause and a case for more money, but I suspect that those on considerably lower salaries with technical know-how are already eyeing up the rail industry with interest, many wondering what on earth these workers are actually complaining about. And as far as I can see, conditions, well, they're pretty good. I mean, Sunday for rail workers, it seems to be a protected day, and if whilst on a break, a manager happens to say hello to a worker, the worker can apparently restart that break from there. Does that happen where you work? It definitely doesn't happen here at GB News. With regard to safety, voluntary redundancies are on the table to reduce the workforce and replace out-of-date technology. The argument coming from the striking workers seems to be that the plan to reduce the workforce will make the railways less safe. But that doesn't really add up. I mean, take the airline industry. It went through something similar. I mean, did you know that most plane crashes are caused by pilot error? Automation has made it safer and more efficient. Then there's the supermarket industry. A similar thing happened there. My first job was at a local Asda. I used to have a price gun and would put the price sticker on pretty much every item. In those days are gone. Even corner shops don't individually price things anymore. I was then later upgraded to the tills, but even that now requires fewer workers. Most have been replaced by self-service. Everything is faster and more accurate. It makes sense and more to the point. Get that? It saves the employer money, which should eventually filter down to the customer. That's you and me. I mean, have you seen the price of rail fares these days? Seriously. Grant Shapps has accused the rail union bosses of undercutting attempts to modernise the network and also predicted that the public's approval for driverless trains will actually soar. He said, every hour of strikes will surely increase the enthusiasm from the travelling public to have their trains automated to get rid of this threat over our heads that workers will strike. He went on to say that these strikes are severely counterproductive. I suspect, whilst the workers' demands may well be met in terms of pay, we are now on the fast track towards automation. If the pandemic has taught us anything, there is always another way, and often the alternative is better. Situations like this bring on creative solutions. So the question now is, would you be happy in a driverless train?
Yeah, I think that's interesting because if I'm not mistaken, the DLR in London is Docklands Light Railway, is that what it stands for? Are driverless, basically, aren't they? So it's not alien at all that we might see driverless trains in London and elsewhere. This is a problem I think we're going to face in many industries. People calling for higher pay, which we don't really have to pay them because of the state the country's economy is in, but also the added issue of automation, because, as you say, low-paid workers are going to be pushed out pretty much of the economy often.
Well, actually, they're quite high-paid, some of the train drivers, to be honest, in comparison to many of the other jobs that are of a similar ilk. So if you say these drivers don't want to drive anymore, they're going to do that, then whilst these are longer distances than the Docklands Light Railway, I mean, this just pedals on from station to station, like they're only like yards apart. Literally, you could probably walk it, but we're too lazy for that, aren't we? That's why we're so overweight, most of us. But anyway, these trains are driverless. So, and we have already put our faith into that. So whilst there is usually a conductor running through, that reduces one worker. And if that's one worker for every train, that's a lot of savings. I think these workers need to be pretty careful.
Yeah, and it does beg the question, though. We might have to start having conversations about, well, if we're going to have automation kick into so many industries, is it perhaps time to introduce a universal basic income? Because there might be tens of thousands, maybe millions of people who find themselves basically out of a job and you know, robots will be taking over their jobs. And what do those people do, basically?
Well, they could perhaps start filling up the millions of unemployed that we've got, because we've got really lots of jobs out there and people aren't going for them. So I just think, you know, but I understand if the wage is rubbish, then you won't. So that will hopefully push the wages up. But I'm just thinking with these rail workers, and particularly the way that the income and salaries of some of them are being quoted at the moment, that people won't have sympathy. And if it can be done another way, cheaper and better, be careful.
We'd rather have that. Well, the Prime Minister has held crisis talks at a Cabinet meeting this morning in response to the worst rail strikes in over 30 years. 50,000 union members walked out, demanding an 11% pay rise after last-ditch talks failed yesterday afternoon.
The Prime Minister is expected to call for sensible compromise and say that the unions are harming the very people they claim to be helping. The RMT union says that it has no choice and is taking industrial action to defend the pay and conditions of its members.
Yes, well, the Transport Secretary, Grant Shapps, has confirmed a skeleton timetable for today, as well as Thursday and Saturday. Those are the other 2 days of the strikes. That will see about 20% of services continuing to run. London Underground services will also be striking today.
Well, our reporters are up and down the country giving us the latest on what's happening. How are you getting on? How is it affecting you? Let us know. Get in touch. GBViews at gbnews.uk.
Yes, well, as we mentioned, our reporters are up and down the country, been speaking to people, seeing what they're having to do to change their journeys today. First, we can go to Ellie Costello, who's our South East reporter, who's outside Victoria bus station. Ellie, good morning. Lots of people will have to resort to using buses today, won't they, instead of tubes and trains. What have people been saying there on the ground?
Yes, exactly. Good morning to the two of you. Essentially, if you want to get out of London today on public transport, then a coach or a bus is the only way to do so. So you can imagine in Victoria Coach Station behind me, the scenes that are unfolding right now. I've just gone in and had a little bit of a walk around. It really is very, very busy. Long queues inside, people packing onto those coaches to places like Bristol, to Glasgow, to Cardiff. Cities all over the United Kingdom. They're set for really long journeys here. Obviously, they can't get the train and they can't make their way on the tubes to the airports either. Lots of tourists in there who came to London not realising there would be a strike this week. So there's a lot of confusion. Lots of people sitting on the floor and sleeping on the floor, trying to make new plans. It is pretty chaotic in Victoria Coach Station right now. And outside, I've been speaking to people about how the strikes have affected them today.
I have to go back to Belgium this afternoon. Normally I go by tube, but now I have to take the bus or maybe Uber, taxi or something else.
And would you support the rail workers and the tube workers that are going on strike? They want better pay?
I'm not aware of the problem, so I cannot tell anything about it.
Not really. I'm a tourist up here today. My coach doesn't go back till 5 o'clock, so I've got the day up here. I'm just relying on taxis and buses to get me around until my coach departs. So hopefully I'll find something to do. Lots to do.
I haven't been able to get any trains to work. I've been on buses since about 6:30. They keep cancelling, keep driving past. It's impossible to get on them. They're all so packed. I've only literally just gotten to work now.
And what was it like on the buses? Were they packed? Were there loads of people?
Absolutely crammed. It's hard to even get on one. They're all just driving straight through.
And what do you think about the people who are doing this, the people who are striking? They want better pay. Do you think that they have a right to do that, or do you think there's a better way of doing it?
I think they have a right to do it, but I don't think it should impact everyone else trying to get to work. I think there's got to be other ways to go about it, 100%.
Well, let's...
Well, there is a coach coming up just behind me now, which is absolutely packed. And there is also a bike rank just over my shoulder, and that is absolutely packed as well. People are resorting to cycling around the city today to make their way around. There's also a bus stop here, a London bus stop with long queues, people heading out and about on the buses today. And the advice is, obviously, it's very hot in London and in other parts of the country. If you are heading out, check before you travel, leave plenty of time, and pack some water as well, because it is a very hot day.
Well, thank you so much, Ellie. God, busy, isn't it? Well, let's turn Now to our Scotland reporter, Davie Donaldson, who's at Edinburgh, Waverley Station. Morning, Davie. I understand that you're actually at the picket line. Tell us what's going on out there.
Yeah, that's right. I'm at the back of Waverley Station here in Edinburgh where the picket line is set up. There's, I don't know, about 20 people or so far, but more predicted, and handing out leaflets and flyers. I'm delighted to say I'm joined by Mick Hogg from the RMT union, who's obviously taking part in this. Mick, why is it you're out on strike and have the picket line?
Well, we're here defending jobs, terms and conditions, and we make no apology over the intransigency of government, Network Rail and the train operating companies to enter into meaningful dialogue discussion in order to find a solution to the current dispute.
And there's a lot of people obviously out on strike, and it's certainly going to affect trains up and down the country. We've seen something like 10% of trains only running.
Yes, it's unfortunate that this is the situation. However, RMT remain available for constructive dialogue, discussion, morning, noon and night. We don't want to actually be here. We don't want to actually take strike action, but our hands being forced by the intransigency and the approach by government, who are actually forcing the RMT to take strike action in the defence of jobs, terms and conditions.
I mean, my understanding is it's not all about pay, it's about the safety of the rail network as well.
Absolutely. It's all about safety. It's all about, like say, having a railway that's fit for a purpose in order to ensure we have a clean, safe, reliable railway that runs on time. These are the assurances, guarantees that we're actually seeking from government. It's the intransigency of government who are actually refusing point blank to enter into meaningful dialogue in order to find a solution.
Thanks very much, Mick. Well, there we have it there, the RMT saying that they're certainly up for discussions, up for negotiations, so it's really up to the other parties to come to the table and try and sort this out to avoid more rail strikes on Thursday and on Saturday.
Yes, it doesn't seem like they will be reaching a conclusion anytime soon, a resolution anytime soon, sadly. Well, not this week at least. Thank you, Davie, for bringing us that from Edinburgh Waverley Station. And our reporter Alice Porter is also at Reading Station for us. Alice, are there any trains running where you are? We're hearing that 20% of services are operating nationally. What's going on where you are?
Hello there, good morning. Yes, normally we'd have hundreds of trains coming through here, but we're only operating at about 20% capacity, as you were saying there. Normally lots of trains coming into the capital, but the doors didn't even open until 7:30 this morning. And I'm joined by Mark Hopwood, who's the Managing Director of Great Western Railway. Firstly, just talk me through, what's your reaction to people who are on the picket line at the moment? I mean, are you very disappointed?
Well, obviously, we're always disappointed when we have strike action. It's particularly disappointing, because of the impact it has on our customers. We want to provide a train service. We're here in Reading today. Reading relies heavily on its link with London. Normally, you can get there in less than 30 minutes, and there's many, many trains each hour. So we're disappointed that strike action's taking place. We obviously want to solve that, but our focus today has been on having a contingency plan, delivering that contingency plan. And while, as you say, we're running less trains, we have got, I think, a reasonable service here. We've got 3 or 4 trains an hour up to London. We're serving Basingstoke and Bristol and Cardiff as well as London. So we're focusing on that today.
Oh, of course, the people who are on the picket line, many of them are demanding a 6% increase in their salary. I mean, we're in a cost of living crisis for a lot of people who work within the stations or along the railways. I mean, that is very much needed for many of them.
It's a complex subject, isn't it? And I think you've also got to look at the perspective of us. We've got, only 70% of our revenue back after COVID. A lot of customers have chosen different ways of working, different ways of travelling. Some don't need to travel at all. During the pandemic, over 2 years, we got £16 billion. That's a lot of money, £16 billion of government support. So the railway industry has got to have a really serious look at how it operates in the future and how it uses money, because a lot of the money that we're getting is actually taxpayers' money from people who themselves are dealing with the same issues you mentioned.
Well, Mark, thank you very much for speaking to me there. There seems to be a lot of good communication here at the station. We haven't had too many people turning up expecting a train that wasn't there. So I think a lot of people have heeded the travel advice, and that was to not go out on public transport if you can avoid it.
Yes. such a mess, isn't it, Alice? Thank you for bringing us that. But at least some services are still continuing to run 20% for those who need to use them.
Yeah, all good. Well, listen, lots of you be getting in touch with your views about this rail strike. I'm going to read this one here. I was going to read, well, he says he's just been watching another news channel, pouring the usual petrol on the dispute. I won't say which one. He says, this is from Ronald. He said, let us not forget it is the RMT that has chosen the date and action for maximum effect to deliberately cause the most inconvenience for the least amount of cost to their members. So blame them if your child misses their exams. Thank you very much for that, Ronald.
Yeah, and get in touch and let us know what if your child having to miss their exam or any other. Somebody's just emailed in saying they had to cancel a concert they were meant to attend, which they're really disappointed about. What things have you had to do because of these rail strikes? So let us know. Just one more view. Bob says he was a bus driver in his 20s for London Transport and he had to belong to the transport union to work for the buses, even though he didn't want to be a unionist. And there were several strikes he disagreed with at the time. And he had 2 children at the time and wasn't getting paid. So things were very difficult. The members should realise they're being used as pawns. That's what Bob has to say there. Keep your views coming in. Of course, we'd love to hear from you. There's obviously lots of disruption taking place around the country. And after the break, we're going to stick on that story. TfL are staging strike action today too. That's Transport for London in a dispute over pensions, pay and jobs, bringing London to a standstill. We'll bring you the latest after the weather.
Hello, a very good morning to you. A fine start out there once again. Cloudier weather has arrived into the north with a few showers expected today, but actually for the vast majority it's set fair over the next few days with a ridge of high pressure across much of the UK, extending all the way from a large high in the mid-Atlantic. Any fronts that do arrive into the northwest will be weak affairs, and that's what we've seen essentially overnight. A weather front has brought cloudier conditions to Scotland and Northern Ireland. The far north of England sees that cloud arrive during the morning, but the rain has more or less fizzled out, so just a few spots of rain, mainly towards western hills and coasts, and some showers developing for eastern Scotland, perhaps the Pennines as well. But for the vast majority, by the afternoon, it's dry, it's bright, and it's increasingly warm and sunny, with temperatures reaching 25 Celsius in the south and the east of England, mid to high teens for the north of Scotland under the cloud, but central and eastern Scotland could see temperatures into the 20s still. Into the evening, it looks like the clear skies will continue across England and Wales, and the cloud will increasingly break up across eastern Scotland as well, although some showery rain will move into the northwest. Here, 11 Celsius, but further south, those temperatures are rising actually day by day and night by night, so a relatively warm night compared to the last few. And then a bright sunny start for many tomorrow morning. Plenty of sunshine once again across England, Wales, central and eastern Scotland also faring well. I think western Scotland, especially the far northwest and the Northern Isles, likely to see some thicker cloud and some rain at times. But away from here, well, it's looking increasingly warm. Mid to high 20s by this stage, 27 Celsius possible somewhere like Norwich or London, perhaps even 28 degrees. And on Thursday, the heat peaks with plenty more sunshine to come for the vast majority. Away from the northwest of Scotland, mid to high 20s or even 30 Celsius.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV, on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good morning. It's fast approaching 28 minutes after 10 o'clock. This is To The Point with Mercy Moroki and me, Nana Akwe, on GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio this morning.
Now, Unite the Union and RMT members at the Transport for London and London Underground are staging strike action today in a dispute over pensions, pay and jobs. This strike action is a different dispute to the national rail strikes, but is gridlocking the capital.
So our national reporter, Paul Hawkins, joins us now from outside London Bridge Station. Paul, can you update us? What's going on? What's happening?
Yeah, London Bridge Station, it seems like a lot of mainline stations in London, in the capital, are very quiet, frankly, and it feels like people are sticking to the stay-at-home message, work from home if you can. They're not, I mean, yes, the buses are busier, the roads are busier, but it doesn't feel like it's gridlock. It doesn't feel really chock-a-block, and it feels like people are choosing to work from home if they can. Those that do have to come into the office, they are taking the bus, they're on scooters, on mopeds, taking taxis, etc. But the stations, the mainline stations like this one, London Bridge, the third busiest station in the UK, normally 15 million passengers moving through here every year, much quieter this morning. And the knock-on effect of that is the taxi rank outside is much quieter, because the taxis are congregating around the hotels and picking up passengers there, because people are staying in hotels overnight so that they can get to work, walk to work in the morning. We've spoken to a couple of people this morning who've said, yes, it's caused an inconvenience. They haven't been able to go home, haven't been able to see their families, so they've had to stay in hotels overnight. But it has to be said, and it's purely anecdotal, that most of the people we've spoken to this morning have backed the strikes for now, although the longer the strikes go on, of course, that's where we will see public opinion begin to fade, certainly those who support the strikes. Some news that's just coming in from Boris Johnson, by the way, who's holding a cabinet meeting. He's been speaking about the strikes. He's said that they are causing unnecessary aggravation, but says commuters must be prepared to stay the course in the face of the walkouts. He said the union barons need to sit down with Network Rail and the train companies and get on with it. He said without reform, the industry will go bust, and the result will be they have to hike up the cost of tickets still further. Now, as you mentioned, there is also a Transport for London strike, I should say a tube strike taking place by RMT and Unite in the capital. It's the fourth network-wide strike in the capital this year. The lines that are suspended, the Bakerloo, the Circle, the Hammersmith and City, the Jubilee, Metropolitan, Piccadilly, Victoria and Waterloo and City lines. We're going to be talking to Sadiq Khan later this morning. We'll be asking him what he's doing about the strikes and how the talks are ongoing with the unions in that dispute. It's a similar dispute to the national rail strikes. The TfL, Transport for London, want to cut 600 jobs. They need to make a significant amount of savings. They've had a lot of money handed to them from central government to deal with the lack of revenue because of the pandemic, and the conditions attached to that bailout have been to be more efficient, to cut jobs and to potentially close ticket offices as well. So unions in London going on strike for a similar reason, and we're going to be speaking to Sadiq Khan later on this morning, finding out how he's going to be dealing with the strikes and what he'll be saying to the unions.
Yeah, that should be interesting.
Paul, are you getting a sense, Paul, that people are frustrated, or are you getting the sense that people are like, yeah, we did this through the pandemic, we can handle it?
A bit of both, really. I mean, obviously, they say that a lot of the people we speak to are the people who are having to come into the office, right? So we're not obviously talking to the people who are working from home. They tell us that their colleagues that are working from home are more than happy to, and other people are frustrated. Bearing in mind, people aren't just trying to get to work this morning, people are also trying to get back from work. We just spoke to a lady here, a care worker. She's done an overnight shift looking after a private client in Wood Green in North London. She's taken a bus for 2 hours to get from North London to here to London Bridge. She then found out her train was cancelled. She's got to wait 45 minutes for another train to get to South Norwood, where she's then running an errand before she goes back home to Abbey Wood, where she lives. It's taking hours to get very short distances across the capital. People are inconvenienced by it, but at the moment they do understand why rail workers are going on strike, because the cost of everything is so high.
Yeah, well, lots of people won't have sympathy with them either. Paul, thank you for bringing us that update. Of course, lots of people will be saying, well, yes, my costs are high and this rail strike is making my costs even higher this week. So they certainly won't have sympathy, especially if they're trying to get kids to school and go to appointments.
And especially if it's the care worker that Paul pointed out, because she'll be paid considerably less than a lot of those rail workers.
Yes, well, after the break, some happier news. Prince William turns 40 today, and our royal reporter Cameron Walker looks at the future king using his status to highlight the causes he cares about, not least homelessness. But before that, a look at this morning's news headline.
Good morning, it's 10:33. I'm Tamsin Roberts in the GB newsroom. Well, we can start with some breaking news to bring you at this hour. 60 firefighters have been deployed to battle a blaze at a high-rise residential block in West London. It's not far from Grenfell Tower, which was destroyed by fire 5 years ago, killing 72 people. The London Fire Brigade says half of a flat on the 12th floor is alight. That's all we have at the moment. We will, of course, bring you more on this story as we get it. To other news now. The Prime Minister has told a cabinet meeting reforms are needed on the railways as nationwide strikes cause major travel disruption across the UK. With 80% of train services cancelled, Boris Johnson warned commuters they must stay the course in the face of what he's calling unnecessary aggravation. More walkouts are planned for Thursday and Saturday, but the knock-on effects will be felt all week. Boris Johnson is urging unions and rail bosses to get back around the table to resolve the dispute.
We need the union barons to sit down with Network Rail and the train companies and get on with it. And we need, I'm afraid, everybody, and I say this to the country as a whole, we need to get ready to stay the course.
RMT General Secretary Mick Lynch says strikers will overcome whatever obstacles the government puts in the way. Well, unions have reacted with fury over a leaked memo which suggests Labour has banned its frontbenchers from picket lines. The head of the TSSA union described it as ridiculous nonsense by a party that was created by trade unions. Labour has declined to comment, although some MPs have joined demonstrations. Shadow Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Pat McFadden, didn't deny the claim. TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
we're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you. And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good morning. The time is 10:37 and you're watching To The Point with me, Mercy Moroki and Nana Queer on GB News. We're also on your radio this morning, so you might be listening to us, and we're also online as usual.
So could the national rail strike spread to other industries? Members of the Criminal Bar Association, or CBA, have voted in favour of industrial action by over 80% in dispute over legal aid funding.
Yes, well, this is at a time of significant backlog in the courts across England and Wales. So why are criminal barristers on strike, and should they be doing so given this backlog? Well, get in touch and let us know what you think of this story. gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Well, joining us now to talk about this further is Stephen Barrett, a barrister and writer. Stephen, thank you so much for joining us. Are you going to be striking? And I thought barristers earned loads of money, so why on earth is this happening?
Well, so just to make it very clear for your viewers, these barristers who are striking are barristers who are paid by the public. So I'm not paid by the public. I'm paid privately. I don't receive public money, and I won't be striking because I don't do this type of work. What I think is important, and what I want to highlight, is the tension that comes when barristers strike. It's a relatively new thing to happen in our long history of being barristers, and it causes a real tension with a line that I care about, which is the line between politics and law. Because striking, in order to get yourself more money, which is what they are doing, they've been offered a 15% pay rise and they want a 25% pay rise. I have no position on that at all, and will not publicly express a position on that, because that is a political decision to be taken in the political arena by everybody. The public is entitled to have a view on this. This is not a matter for legal expertise. But when barristers engage in political activity in public, it does cause a tension with our regulatory rules. We have something called the cab rank rule. And that means that we must take on cases if we are qualified in that area of law and if we practice in it, and we don't really get a choice. And that rule, by taking away our choice, it protects us from politics. That's what it does. And what's happened over sort of the last 15, 20 years is that the desire to do politics has put a lot of barristers in tension with that rule. So Lord Wolfson of Tredegar intervened via the Times recently to point out that barristers who refuse to take on cases for which they are qualified on some sort of political ground are putting themselves in tension with this rule. And the rule is very important, because when politics runs into the room, I sort of always think of it a bit like a bull in a china shop or a football game in a library. Everybody needs to know what the rules are, and the rule will protect us. So occasionally barristers have to represent people who the public really do not like, and who may be, from the perspective of politics, really not very nice people. But we get to say, well, we don't make a choice on this.
Sure, and I suppose that is the nature of the job. But in terms of barristers striking, how does this affect people who are arrested or who need criminal legal advice, basically? Because it surely is the right of any person who does happen to be arrested, to have a lawyer present and to get that legal advice. Could this interfere with that right?
It will inevitably interfere with that right, yes. And that's why we didn't used to strike. And what's been happening in this sort of 15, 20-year period is this change in how we are. And I don't think it's settled today. And this is another test. This will be another dramatic event that seriously tests what our rules are. And we actually have quite a lot of regulators, but one of our regulators had a meeting on Saturday, and there was a discussion about breaking our regulatory rules, so committing a regulatory offence deliberately, and what would happen if barristers did that en masse. And I find even that discussion to be incredibly surprising. It is not how we used to be, and the desire to do politics, the desire to achieve political outcomes, because presumably people believe that this strike will achieve a political outcome. But that desire is what's putting us in tension with our rules. We do have rules, and they are there, as you say, to protect the public. Because we as lawyers, we are servants. We are not masters of the people, and we are regulated. We are under duties and obligations to the public. I am under duties and obligations to my clients. And I think one of the lines that we can clearly see now with this strike is that if a barrister is instructed to do a trial and the trial date is in the diary and everybody's going to turn up, then that barrister must turn up. And that's obviously now in tension with the very idea of having a strike. So what's happening is that it's new for us to strike. It's only the publicly paid ones who are doing it because they want larger share of public money. And it's causing tension with our rules and how we function as barristers. And yes, the public will suffer. That is the inevitable consequence.
Oh, crikey. Well, Stephen, thank you so much for giving us all of that. That's Stephen Barrett.
And fantastic hair, might I add.
I'm going to make a wig just like that one. Thank you. Stephen Barrett, he's a barrister and a writer.
Yes, very concerning, I think. Why don't we just all go on strike, since everybody might as well just go home and just forget about it? Because, everybody wants higher pay. Everybody wants more money. We can't all have it, unfortunately. We're going to bring the country to a standstill.
What happened to the choice? Look, if you're a legal aid barrister, as he said, it's only legal aid barristers, then change. Upgrade your skills and become a barrister where you're a private barrister and take the risks that people who go it alone take. I don't really get why people think, well, they're so entrenched. I think it has something to do with the pandemic, where everyone was paid to literally do nothing, and then the money started coming in. People think, hang on a minute, the government can get money.
Yeah, we have developed, I think, a bit of an entitlement culture. And we forget that somebody has to pay for it, and it's everybody else that has to pay for it when you're asking for more public money. But anyway, let us know what you think. GBViews at gbnews.uk.
Right, let's move away from industrial action for a bit. This week is National School Sports Week. My son, he's got his school sports day, if weather permits, on Friday. There's been a new study that's revealed that despite half of adults believing that sport is important, 1 in 10 parents admit writing sick notes to regularly get their children out of PE in school.
Yes, I must admit, I did used to forge sick notes.
Did you?
Well, not from the doctor, obviously. I'm sure that's a criminal offence, but I meant I used to forge sick notes from my mum to say I couldn't do PE when I couldn't be bothered. Anyway.
I was at boarding school, that couldn't happen.
Oh, goodness.
Just come and get you through your room.
Well, just 38% of parents are aware that children aged 5 to 18 should be active for 60 or more minutes every day, which is a 10% drop on last year. Well, one charity, the Youth Sports Trust, is trying to work with families, schools and government to ensure parents are better supported when it comes to understanding the benefits of sport and keeping active for their children's future health.
Well, we're delighted to be joined by Alison Oliver, MBE, the Chief Executive of the Youth Sport Trust. Alison, thank you for joining us. Right, so talk to us about this then, because give us a bit more detail on what this is all about.
Oh, well, thanks ever so much for having me. National School Sport Week has been going since 2008, but it's becoming more and more important with every year that goes by, and particularly after the last 2 years, that National School Sport Week is a week where we raise awareness of the important place of play and sport in every child's education and development. But importantly, just linking to those statistics that you mentioned earlier, school sport and physical education need to be a place where every child belongs, and not an alienating environment where a child would want their parent to write a note to excuse them from it. So the week is about celebrating all of the benefits that come to young people when they are active, when they play, and when they take part in sport. Everything from their physical and mental health to their understanding and development of human relationships, particularly important in a increasingly digital age, but right through to their ability to concentrate, to focus in class, improves their memory and their cognitive performance. So we want young people to be able to enjoy it more, and we have to do more to make sure it's an inclusive experience. But at the same time, we do need parents and carers now more than ever to understand we're staring in the face potentially of the next pandemic, one which is characterised by inactivity in young people, impacting on their physical health, their mental health and their social well-being.
An obesity crisis, people eating too much and doing too little.
Yeah. How do you... I mean, there is a reality, though, isn't there? I remember being at school and, some people just didn't like sports. They didn't want to be active. It's a choice that they had. But, my point is, how do you force a child who just simply doesn't like sports, who doesn't want to get active, doesn't want to do PE, how do you force them to enjoy sports when they simply don't?
It's a great point, actually, and I sort of have empathy with both of you, because we do need to move. We're human beings. We're designed to move. It's a really important point and part of our physical development, our ability to get on with people, and our mental health as well. But you can't, and we should not, force children. What we need to do is engage children in things that are fun, embrace friendship, embrace creativity, focus on their what we call physical literacy, the development of the confidence, competence and motivation to move, developing those sorts of things through our physical education curriculum, so children don't feel that sport and physical activity is something that's uncomfortable or not for them. Those sorts of attitudes tend to be born out of experiences where the focus is too much on the end result, is all about winning and being the best rather than being your personal best. And often today, we find that where teachers and educators and parents talk to children about what they do enjoy and build the curriculum or the activity in the home around what children do enjoy and find fun, that's a really good way of getting them active.
Oh, I think you're being way too nice, Alison. When I was young, I just pushed you out there and get on with it. And then then it gave you the edge and forced you to be competitive in life, which life in the end is sort of a competition. Alison, thank you so much for talking to us. That's Alison Oliver, MBE, the Chief Executive of the Youth Sports Trust. You like sport? I was out there, I want to win.
I don't doubt that whatsoever. And you're very fit and sporty still now, aren't you? So
even at 50.
Yeah, exactly. I bet you're much more healthier than me. I don't do much sports.
But you're young though. You can do that. You can do that to yourself.
What was your favourite thing in PE?
I'm a gymnast. I was gymnastics, so I used to do a round off. About 15 backflips and then a double back somersault at the end. And I can still do round off a couple of backflips. And
You'll have to show me after the show.
Well, I will do. I don't want to ruin the lights. And obviously, I'm going to have to hold on to my wig this time.
Get in touch. Let us know what you make of all of that. Give us your opinions. gbviews@gbnews.uk. Now, it was reported earlier this morning that Labour MPs were under strict instructions not to attend any picket lines and show solidarity with striking rail workers today. Well, this hasn't been totally obeyed, it would seem, because on Twitter, Stockport MP Nav Mishra said, as a proud trade unionist, I stand with all workers on our railway network who are taking industrial action to fight for their jobs and keep passengers safe.
Now, Labour veteran Diane Abbott openly taunted Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer, saying that he was, quote, on the RMT picket line at the Seven Sisters depot.
Yeah, just showing. So she tweeted some pictures as well of her there at that depot. So clearly not a unified Labour Party when it comes to the message they want to send out on these strikes. But
it'd be worrying, isn't it? Labour leading something like this, we would just be on strike land.
Yeah, we would indeed.
Well, today, the Duke of Cambridge turns 40 today. He's only a young thing. And the future heir to the throne continues to use his status to highlight causes he cares about.
Yes, well, our royal reporter, Cameron Walker, has this report for us.
Conservationist, father and future king. Prince William is Britain's most popular royal after his grandmother, the Queen. For an ancient institution with a motto of never complain, never explain, the Duke of Cambridge has been a pioneer in modernising the monarchy he will one day lead. Ian Pelham-Turner was one of the first photographers to take official pictures of a baby William in 1982. Royal rules dictated he only had minutes to capture the perfect shot and wasn't allowed to speak to parents Charles and Diana. The Princess of Wales was unaware her son's teething ring was blocking her face.
And I made a noise like I was dying. And Diana turned round and she knew I was breaking protocol, but I wasn't, because I wasn't actually speaking. As she moved the teething ring, William went to grab the teething ring, and in 1/60th of a second, that really made my career. I've been living off that picture for the past 40-odd years since.
The Duke of Cambridge has a long-standing passion for protecting wildlife, and one of his first royal patronages in 2005 was the conservation charity Tusk. Before the charity's existence, up to 100,000 elephants a year were killed by poachers in the illegal ivory trade. Charles Mayhew, MBE, is Tusk's co-founder and CEO. He's worked closely with Prince William and has travelled to Africa with him to help protect wildlife.
From the moment he became patron, we saw a significant rise in our revenue, but much more importantly than that, his ability to promote the work not only of Tusk but actually the wider conservation movement, and using his patronage of Tusk as a means to do that and to get some very sort of powerful messages across.
William is the future of the monarchy, but the future of the planet worries him. His new global prize for the environment was launched, the most ambitious and prestigious of its kind, designed to find 50 solutions to repair our planet over the next 10 years.
It's a hugely ambitious target, but I do think the positivity and that finding ways through this is better than saying, it's all doom and gloom, we're all going to, perish. I think we've got to harness our ingenuity and our ability to invent.
The prince's passion perhaps stems from his grandfather and father's work over the decades. Having a family of his own gives him the opportunity to inspire the next generation to look after the planet. But the Duke's main duty is supporting the Queen, and her mobility issues means William represents her at more engagements. Good practice for a monarch of the 21st century. Cameron Walker, GB News.
That is, we were just showing a picture there for those listening to us of Prince William. He released this picture, I think, a couple of days ago with all his kids, Prince Louis,
Charlotte.
Princess Charlotte and Prince George. Got there in the end, eh? And they're all just, it's one of those pictures, because anybody who's ever tried to take a family photo with multiple kids knows not everybody, you'll never catch every child smiling at the same time. There's always that one kid who ruins the photo, isn't there? But that, I don't know how they did that, but every one of his kids had a big smile on his face.
We took hundreds of pictures. Now, we've been talking
about... You have
to
take hundreds until you get everybody smiling, don't you?
We've been talking about quite a few things. I mean, one of the things we were talking about was the rail strikes. Of course, it's the big thing at the moment. And this is from David. Now, David is very passionate about this. He says, hi, I'm really angry. I'm a theatre nurse. I'm lucky enough to be able to stay in student nurse quarters for the week. Imagine if one of those strikers had a massive brain injury that needed immediate surgery, but the surgeon couldn't get to work. Imagine if that Mick Lynch, it could be him. So my others, because of the selfish, I earn less than train drivers and would love a pay rise, but I have a conscience.
Yeah, that's true. And
I missed out the swears.
I noticed. It's true. It's a similar argument people were making when we were seeing lots of disruption because of Insulate Britain and Extinction Rebellion, wasn't it? Because you're actually stopping, you're talking about saving the planet and saving the people on the planet while you're actually leading in some cases to people dying because they can't get to the blooming hospital. And sometimes these things are a bit counterproductive because you are stopping, you're putting people against your cause, aren't you? By stopping people literally receiving life-saving treatment and things like that.
Well, it's not good enough, but let's see what happens there. Now, don't forget the reminder, every Wednesday we hand our show over to you. So it's your show, so bring us your ideas. What do you think? What would you like us to discuss? Get in touch in the usual way.
Yes, and you can just tell us, and we will discuss tomorrow what you want us to discuss. To the point at gbnews.uk, or you can email your views at gbviews@gbnews.uk. Well, keep those thoughts coming in, but we will be back with today's more top stories of today and plenty of your views after this short break.
Hello again, I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. Warm sunny spells for much of England and Wales today. Cloudier for Scotland and Northern Ireland with showers for some, but for the vast majority it is dry because of a large area of high pressure sitting in the mid-Atlantic, stopping any deep lows or weather fronts from arriving. But a couple of weak features are just about sneaking into the top of the UK. And that's why we've started with cloud and some rain in places for Scotland, Northern Ireland and the far north of England. The rain largely disappears by the afternoon, but one or two showers are possible for Aberdeenshire, Angus, Perth and Kinross, and for the far north of England over the Pennines. To the south of that, plenty of sunshine and feeling very warm, with highs of 24 in Cardiff, 25 in London, 20 in Glasgow and 18 in Belfast under the cloudier skies, so not feeling quite as warm here, but nevertheless, temperatures holding up well overnight because an increasingly humid airflow will arrive from the west and northwest, and although we'll see clear spells in many places, for most of those temperatures will hold up in the double figures, in some spots 13 or 14 Celsius by dawn. Some spots of rain for the far north of Scotland and for the Western Isles with thick and low cloud here, but a brighter day to come for eastern and central Scotland as well as northern England. Plenty of sunshine breaking through during the morning and holding on for the afternoon as well. So really it's Northern Ireland, Western and Northern Scotland where we keep the cloudier skies on Wednesday afternoon with some spots of rain and drizzle. But elsewhere, temperatures up to the mid or even high 20s with that sunshine. 24 in Aberdeen, 28 in London. During Wednesday evening, the clear spells continue, apart from, again, northern and western Scotland, where the thicker cloud will bring some spots of rain and drizzle. And then during Thursday daytime, it's going to be increasingly warm, temperatures peaking at 29 or 30 before cooler weather on Friday.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation. We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you. And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Very good morning to you. The time's 11 o'clock and this is To The Point on GB News with me, Mercy Moroki, and Nana Akua on your TV, radio and online.
Now we're here with you until midday with updates on today's biggest stories and lots of discussion, expert guests and even our opinions as well as yours.
Yes, and make sure you get in touch to give us your opinions on gbviews@gbnews.uk and we'll get to as many as we can throughout the programme. But first, it's time for the latest news headlines.
Good morning. It's 1 minute past 11. I'm Tamsin Roberts in the GB newsroom. The Prime Minister has told a cabinet meeting reforms are needed on the railways as nationwide strikes cause major travel disruption across the UK. With 80% of train services cancelled, Boris Johnson warned commuters they must stay the course in the face of what he's calling unnecessary aggravation. More walkouts are planned for Thursday and Saturday, but the knock-on effects will be felt all week. It's after last-minute talks failed to resolve a dispute between unions and rail bosses over pay, jobs and conditions.
We need the union barons to sit down with Network Rail and the train companies and get on with it. And we need, I'm afraid, everybody, and I say this to the country as a whole, we need to get ready to stay the course.
RMT General Secretary Mick Lynch says members will overcome whatever obstacles the government puts in their way.
This is a lawful dispute under the legislation that the Tories brought in themselves. And every time we meet the hurdles and break the thresholds that they brought in, they want to change the law again. We've got the most draconian laws in Western Europe and in any democracy, in fact, anti-trade union laws. Whatever they bring in, we'll meet that challenge and we'll continue to campaign. And if necessary, we'll take effective industrial action when we need to.
Well, people who need to travel today say they've been struggling with alternatives.
I have to go back to Belgium this afternoon. Normally I go by tube, but now I have to take the bus or maybe Uber, taxi or something else.
Yeah, I'm a tourist up here today. My coach doesn't go back till 5 o'clock, so I've got the day up here. I'm just relying on taxis and buses to get me around until my coach departs.
I haven't been able to get any trains to work. I've been on buses since about 6:30. They keep cancelling, keep driving past. It's impossible to get on them. They're all so packed. I've only literally just gotten to work now.
Unions have reacted with fury over a leaked memo which suggests Labour has banned its frontbenchers from picket lines. The head of the TSSA union described it as ridiculous nonsense by a party that was created by trade unions. Labour has declined to comment, although some MPs have joined demonstrations. Shadow Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Pat McFadden, didn't deny the claim.
I wasn't going to go to one anyway, to be honest, because what I want to see is a negotiated end to this dispute as quickly as possible, because this is obviously causing enormous inconvenience to the public today who need the railways for all sorts of reasons, work and many other reasons, and the sooner this comes to an end, the better.
To other news now, and emergency services have been deployed to a fire at a high-rise residential block in West London. Well, our reporter Rosie Wright is in Shepherd's Bush for us now. And Rosie, what more can you tell us about what's happening there?
So at 9:23, the London Fire Brigade were first alerted to reports of a fire on the 12th floor of this residential block behind me. They said half of a flat was alight, and they have deployed 60 firefighters, 8 fire engines to tackle the blaze. Now, the last update we had from them was half an hour ago when they said they are still dealing with the fire. London Ambulance Service have also deployed several units. They are treating multiple people. The scale of those people's injuries we don't know at this point. Neither do we know the cause of the fire. All of that work will be ongoing. There is quite a big presence of emergency services as you arrive here. What was interesting is that the London Fire Brigade were able to receive live streamed pictures from people who called emergency services of what was happening inside the blaze. Now, lots of people acutely aware that less than a mile away from this residential tower is Grenfell Tower, where, of course, just last week we marked the 5th anniversary where 72 people lost their lives. I'll be on the scene to bring you updates across the morning.
OK, Rosie, thank you. Rosie Wright for us there in West London. As Rosie says, we'll keep you up to date with this story. A Russian man who was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize has sold his medal for £84 million to help Ukrainian children displaced by the war. Dmitry Muratov, a fierce critic of President Putin, was the co-winner of the 2021 prize for his efforts to safeguard freedom of expression. He was editor of a newspaper which ceased operations in March after threats from the Kremlin over its coverage of the conflict in Ukraine. Crowds have returned to Stonehenge to mark the summer solstice for the first time in 2 years. The sun rose over the stones at around 10 to 5 this morning and won't set until almost 9:30 this evening, giving more than 16 and a half hours of daylight. The summer solstice has been celebrated at Stonehenge for thousands of years, with the stones framing the sun as it rises. This is GB News. We'll bring you more news as it happens. Now let's get back to the Point with Mercy and Nana.
Good morning, it's 11:06 and this is To The Point on GB News with me, Mercy Moroki and Nana Akria. On your TV, radio and online, we're here for another hour until midday. Here's what's coming up.
Wow, commuters across the country have woken up to rail chaos this morning as the biggest strike action in a generation gets underway. Our regional report bringing you all you need to know about travelling today, and that's all coming up very short.
Yes, and a new report out of Oldham reveals the ringleader of a notorious child grooming gang is employed as a council welfare officer. That's despite his arrest for the sexual assault of children. How was this allowed to happen? We'll look into this later.
Absolute disgrace. And finally, as Prince William turns 40 today, our royal reporter Cameron Walker talks about his achievements and takes a closer look at the man who will one day be king of the United Kingdom.
Yes, well, we have all of that coming up and much more as well across the programme, and you can get in touch with your views as usual on gbviews@gbnews.uk. Now, the Prime Minister has held crisis talks at a cabinet meeting this morning in response to the worst rail strikes in over 30 years. 50,000 union members walked out, demanding an 11% pay rise after last-ditch talks failed yesterday afternoon.
Now, today sees members of the RMT and Unite unions across various rail providers walk out on strike. London Underground services are also severely restricted today.
Yes, further rail strikes are planned later this week, with workers expected to walk out on Thursday and Saturday as well, and only around 20% of all services across the country will be running.
Now, if you live in Hull, the disruption doesn't end there, as members of the ASLEF union will strike on trains in Hull on Sunday also.
Yes, ASLEF have announced even more strikes in areas of London, with Croydon Tramlink staff planning to walk out later this month and in July as well.
Further walkouts could happen at the end of July. Also, the Transport Salaried Staff Associations is balloting workers at Network Rail and other train companies over work and pay conditions. So this week may not be the worst of it all. There may be more coming.
Yes, sadly. While speaking at a meeting of Cabinet this morning, the Prime Minister condemned the strikes, calling them unnecessary.
All sorts of unnecessary aggravation this is going to cause. And I want to emphasise to everybody this morning why I think those strikes are so wrong and so unnecessary. Don't forget, throughout the pandemic, the UK government supported the railway industry to the tune of £16 billion. We kept our railways going, and quite rightly too. We supported our railway workers and their families. We supported the whole industry. It cost every family in this country thousands and thousands of pounds to do that. And we are making, as everybody knows, bigger investments, longer-term investments in railways than any previous government. The Integrated Rail Plan alone is worth £96 billion. What we're doing is truly transformational. We're making a generational investment in railways, and we love them. We believe in our railways. We believe in our railway infrastructure as a vital part of levelling up across the whole of the country. And I'm proud to be inaugurating Northern Powerhouse Rail, just as I was proud, by the way, to be the Mayor of London who started Crossrail in London, and the Prime Minister who completed Crossrail. We need Crossrail for the north of our country as well, and that is what we are doing. But if we're going to do these colossal investments, as we are and as we must, we've got to have reform. And we've got to have reform in the way the railways work. And it cannot be right that some ticket offices, I think, Grant, are selling, roughly one ticket per hour. We need to get those staff out from behind plate glass onto the platforms, interacting with passengers, with customers in the way that they want to do. And we need the union barons to sit down with Network Rail and the train companies and get on with it. And we need, I'm afraid, everybody, and I say this to the country as a whole, we need to get ready to stay the course. To stay the course, because these reforms, these improvements in the way we run our railways are in the interest of the travelling public. They will help to cut costs for fare payers up and down the country. But they're also in the interest of the railways, of railway workers and their families. Because otherwise, if we don't do this, these great companies, this great industry will face further financial pressure. It will go bust, and the result will be they have to hike up the cost of tickets still further so that people don't use the railways at all, or use them much less than they used to. And that would, I think, be a disaster for this country and for our economy. Folks, this government was elected to do the difficult things and to stay the course, and I hope very much that I can count on your support, and of course count on your support for Grant in everything that he does in the days and weeks ahead. Thank you all very much. Thank you.
Prime Minister Boris Johnson there speaking about the rail strikes. Now, here to give us a regional breakdown of how those strikes could be impacting you, we're joined by our regional reporters, Will Hollis in Nottingham, Davy Donaldson in Linlithgow, and Rachel Sweeney outside at Durham Station.
Yes, well, let's go first to our Scotland reporter, Davy Donaldson, who's at Edinburgh Waverley Station. Morning, Davy. Tell us what's going on in that part of the UK.
Yeah, I'm outside Waverley Station, out the back in Market Street, and we've got the picket line here from the RMT over my shoulder. They've been here since about 7 o'clock this morning, I was told, so making their feelings known and obviously enjoying the right to protest. We've only got about 10% trains running in Scotland at the moment, so a very, very small amount. There's actually only 5 routes running. That's in and around Glasgow and Edinburgh, around the central belt. So if you're in Fife or you're any further north, Perth, Stirling, Dundee, Aberdeen, etc. Inverness, there's no trains at all. So it's obviously having a huge impact in people going about their business. I spoke to some people earlier on outside the Lithgow train station managing to get a train into Edinburgh and Glasgow to get to work. So that's certainly some people are managing to do it, but obviously not everyone. I spoke to the RMT earlier as well. They say it's not just about the actual amount of pay, it's to do with the health and safety as well conditions, because they feel that the cut to workers is going to impact on the safety of the railways. So that's another major point for them and a major talking point. They want to make sure that that's going to happen. I spoke to Mick Hogg earlier. He said that it was the RMT guy here, and he said that they're still open to negotiation. So hopefully, with any luck, something can be done to avoid the strikes on Thursday or Saturday. But as things stand, it certainly looks a pretty bleak picture at the moment. Certainly across Scotland, as I say, only 1 in 10 trains running.
To Will Hollis, who's there in Nottingham. Will.
Oh, he seems to. He seems to not be there. Do we have? Oh, there he is. There you go.
There he is, Will. Now you see, now you don't. Go on then, Will. What have you got for us? What's going on?
Good morning. Yeah, just around the corner. So I've just had a bug fly on my neck there. I hope it wasn't a wasp. I think it was a ladybird. Just around the corner is a very similar scene at Nottingham train station to the one that Davy's experiencing in Scotland. But where I am right now, I'm just outside of the newly opened Broadmarsh bus centre here in the heart of Nottingham, because of course when trains don't run, people still need to get to their destinations. Sure, you could work from home, but a lot of people have returned to the office, and here at the Broadmarsh bus station, National Express is seeing an increase in the amount of people that are using their service. I spoke to somebody from National Express yesterday who said that they've seen a significant increase in both inquiries and bookings for travel on and around the dates of the strike. So of course that's today, Thursday and Saturday, with problems as well in between. They say that services are selling out very quickly on National Express, and they expect 85% to sell out by the duration of the week. And finally, they said it's working hard to increase availability, but there's no way that it can match the sheer volume of the rail network.
Not great, is it? None of that sounding, but he talked about a ladybird. I wonder how soon it'll be before the woke mob get hold of that one. What will it be called? Just a bird now? Can't call it a ladybird.
Yeah, well, let's talk now to Rachel Sweeney, who is... Where are you, Rachel? You're in Durham Station, aren't you? Yes, Rachel's in Durham Station. Tell us what's been going on there and what are people saying about the changes they're having to make to adjust to these strikes?
Well, it's an interesting one from here in the northeast of England, actually. So right now, I'm in between Durham Bus Station, which has just been revamped, and also Durham Train Station, which is a beautiful part of Durham City. This is a really popular station because a lot of people who live in County Durham actually work in Newcastle City Centre or in Gateshead. It's like 9 minutes on the train, about 35 minutes to drive, and it's about nearly an hour on the bus. We've seen buses go past for the last couple of hours. They have had more people on. I've been up to the train station. It is pretty much deserted. Trains are running at 20%. The staff up there were reluctant to speak to us, but there are people up there still working. Now, this morning I've been on the A1 to monitor the traffic situation. What I've found actually is that it doesn't seem to be too bad, and we think that that's down to, well, the public seem to think that that's down to us being a lockdown nation. People are used to working from home or thinking of a plan B, and I really think that the northeast of England has reverted to that pandemic mindset, and that's how they've organised the strikes. They've foreseen the problem and they've solved it. But what we need to think about now is the economy, how that's going to affect the hospitality industries are struggling, and people just trying to get around. That's it from the northeast of England. I'll be back on a picket line shortly.
A bit later. Thank you, Rachel. Rachel Sweeney there in Durham.
Yeah, lovely. I went to the university in Sunderland, which is right next to Durham. Very nice, very nice. I love the sea. Right, well, here to discuss even more travel is our expert, a writer. He's for The Independent, Simon Calder. Simon, good to see you.
Well, very nice to see you. I've actually been running around all day. I've been to Gatwick Airport. I've been across most of the London stations, rather like your excellent reporters. And, well, it's all going quite normally. Really? Bizarrely, if you are in one of the places where they've got trains, then it's just the same old story. So, for example, I got up and went for the 20 to 4 train that was due to be running from Blackfriars, a station in central London, to Gatwick Airport. It was cancelled, not because of the strike, but because there wasn't a driver available. Drivers are a different union. So we all piled into an Uber and we got to Gatwick. Fairly unchaotic at Gatwick this morning, I was glad to see, and then came back on the train. And again, the first train was cancelled because of the crew not being able to get to work. Maybe they were trying to get there by train. The second one broke down at Red Hill, like we all do. And the third one finally lurched in rather late to London Bridge. However, things are now picking up pace. I've been to Liverpool Street, I've been to King's Cross, St Pancras, Euston, Paddington Station, all the big London terminals, and lots of people going to lots of places. But not many people actually, a lot of people heeding the view that you shouldn't be travelling. And I talked to somebody who said, yeah, actually about 20% full, these trains. And to quote this official, he said, the laptop classes are staying at home. There we are.
Because during the pandemic, we all had to learn how to work from home, and it was a scary thing at the very beginning, but then we got used to it.
Yeah.
So now, whilst this will cause some sort of trouble, we have found alternatives. So
well,
is that what you're finding? Or
yeah,
is it
but
just
I mean,
focus? If you go out, it's different.
GBNews would be quite annoyed if you said, no, I'm going to be in the kitchen for the programme this morning. Many workers out there, of course, have to get to their place of occupation. And so there are a lot of people needing to travel. Of course, in other parts of the country, London is completely overserved with trains today. I mean, if you're in Wales, you can't really go anywhere if you're in Cardiff apart from Newport.
Yeah, and on that point, I do want to ask you this, because Ian, one of our viewers and listeners, has emailed in and he says, can you stop reporting these train strikes like it's the end of the world? Our nearest station is 10 miles away, nearest tube station 25 miles. We have one bus service which doesn't run at the weekend. Even the nearest cab firm is 10 miles away. Welcome to life in the countryside.
Yes.
Do you think we've almost become too London-centric in our expectations for what travel should look like, and then we almost forget that actually what we're experiencing here in London would be fantastic if it was in other parts of the country.
Well, quite, and even when things are running normally, if you are in the west of Wales, you've got very few trains and they're very slow. Similar in parts of Scotland, northern England, of course. So yeah, they are looking at the shiny new Elizabeth line, which costs £19 billion.
Lovely.
And thank you for all the tax. And by the way, that's running absolutely normally, regular trains every 5 minutes under the heart of London. So yes, it is a tale of two nations again, if you like. Nothing running in Cornwall, nothing in Dorset. Loads of great seaside resorts cut off. So Blackpool, Skegness, Bognor Regis, Bournemouth, you can't get to any of those. But you can, if you're on an intercity line, you can definitely get to London.
Well, it's a good day for it in a sense, because those who live in those areas like Skegness and all that, they're probably out on the beach and they won't have any people from outside, the tourists coming to invade it.
They love the tourists. I'd love to be in Skegness, frankly. Should we do the show from there tomorrow?
Well, we can't get to it.
Done? Are we done?
I think
are we done talking about strikes? Fantastic. Well, look, Simon, thank you
so much
for joining us. I'm sure we'll have you back soon. Well, now, after the break, we're going to be speaking about a story very serious, actually, that's very troubling as well. How a grooming gang ringleader was arrested for sexual assault of children and then was allowed to work in a council as a welfare officer. This shocking story will be after this weather. Don't miss that.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation. We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you, and we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was, in fact, a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday for To The Point on GB News.
Good morning, it's 11:25 and this is To The Point with me, Mercy Moroki, and Nana Akua on your TV, radio and online on GB News this morning.
Now, on to the story that some viewers may find distressing. A ringleader of a child grooming gang who was arrested for sexual assault of a child was employed as a welfare rights officer by Oldham Council after police failed to tell his employers about his abusive past.
This is actually shocking. I couldn't quite believe this when I read this. This is one of a series of bombshell findings contained in a major report from Oldham Council into how the council itself and the wider police force failed to protect children from grooming and sexual exploitation.
Now, another distressing part of the report details how a 12-year-old girl was sexually assaulted multiple times in 24 hours by 8 men in the area. First in the park, then by 2 Oldham policemen who were supposed to help take her home, and then by a stranger who found the abandoned child and his friends who gang raped her.
This is absolutely shocking, isn't it? It's hard to believe this kind of thing can go on. Well, here to discuss more of this is social policy analyst Dr. Rakib Ahsan. I mean, it doesn't bear thinking about, does it, what some of these young girls have gone through, but the big question here is how was this sort of thing allowed to happen where the police were privy to it and they still didn't stop this particular individual from going on to commit more crimes?
Mercy, this is just a spectacular cross-institutional failure of epic proportions. Ultimately, grooming gang ringleader was employed as a welfare officer in a local council, and the police did not inform his employers about his abusive past in relation to children. I think that this is absolutely astonishing. There's some horrific findings in the report, as already has been discussed, that there was a 12-year-old girl raped multiple times in a single day. The report states that she was seriously let down by the police and the local council. And it states that when it comes to those multi-agency frameworks, which are designed to maximise the protection and safety of the most vulnerable children, that there were fundamental failures and that the correct procedures were simply not followed.
Do you know what? I mean, like it says that she was raped in a park, then by 2 police officers. So this, 2 policemen. So this is a structure of things that are literally impossible for this person to then get help from, because when you do eventually get some support, maybe through social work or something via the council, even there at the top of this institution, there was somebody who would have made sure that wouldn't get out. How was this person eventually found out? Because I'm wondering, how did they finally find out all of this?
Well, I think that this review has taken place. I think many people will clearly say that it's too far, too late, and that considerable damage has been done. I think that when you actually look at Greater Manchester police, there have been fundamental failures in this sphere in the past. For example, the premature closing of Operation Augusta, that was an investigation primarily focused on men of Pakistani origin, which was prematurely closed down by Greater Manchester Police with the support of Manchester City Council. And previous reports suggested that was because there were people within the police. They were insecure because ultimately they'd already investigated a number of cases involving people or men of Kurdish origin, and they didn't want to feel like they were targeting another minority group. So I think that we really need to talk about the destructive impact of identity politics and political correctness when it comes to the safety of the most vulnerable children in society.
Yeah, and it is, we should point out that this independent review says they didn't find evidence of a cover-up and that they found no evidence of widespread child sexual abuse, although they did find multiple failings. You know, but that doesn't make it any better for all the victims involved here. We do get a lot of emails on GB News, which is a topic I fear many other broadcasters are fearful of covering. But do you think a lot of this has to do with a sort of fear of, as you mentioned there, seen to be targeting one community, a sort of fear of stoking up racial tensions? And how can it be right that, you know, because police officers and institutions are fearful of that, that they avoid or turn a blind eye, perhaps, to tackling this heinous crime of child sexual abuse?
Absolutely. I think, Mercy, when it comes to group-based child sexual exploitation, if our public authorities are unwilling or hesitant to tackle those cases just because they may involve ethnic minority men and vulnerable white working class girls, then they simply shouldn't be in they shouldn't be in their jobs. That's the truth of it. They are there to maximize child safety and protection, especially when it comes to especially vulnerable children who are at risk of child sexual exploitation. And to be honest, I think that there's far too many public sector officials. They're more frightened of being accused of being racist when it comes to these kind of issues. But it's always a case, as a result of that, they've ultimately neglected the protection of those vulnerable children, often from dysfunctional family backgrounds, many isolated in the care system. They're simply not doing their jobs. And the report, it says that there's no evidence of a cover-up, but one thing that is very clear is that the correct procedures which are there to enhance and maintain the safety of vulnerable children, they were not correctly followed at all.
It's interesting there that they say there was no sign of cover-up, and obviously that's what the report says. But with so many different agency facets involved in this, I think there must have been something there that wasn't allowing this to come to the forefront, and possibly they may have used the race element as an excuse to cover things up. But they say there was no excuse, no evidence of that.
Well, I think that when it comes to various institutions, I've seen this in various spheres of life, whether it's counter-extremism, it's sort of bread and butter policing. But I think in the field of group-based child sexual exploitation, I do think that institutions have been guilty of being paralysed by the forces of identity politics and political correctness. I think the closing down of Operation Augusta in the Greater Manchester region was a fine example of that. And I think there needs to be a very serious assessment, a very serious examination of the various failures involving Greater Manchester Police.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Look, Dr. Rakib Ehsan, thank you so much for joining us and speaking about that important issue. He's the social policy analyst there. And if you are concerned, or an adult concerned about the welfare of a child, the National Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children has a hotline where you can safely discuss your worries, fears and suspicions, or report child abuse. You can call 0808 800 5000 to speak to somebody. So there you go, that's the NSPCC number. But now, after the break, Ofsted inspectors say a lack of gender identity teaching is a reason for why some of our primary schools are failing. But before that, a look at this morning's news headlines.
Good morning, it's 11:33. I'm Tamsin Roberts in the GB newsroom. The Prime Minister has told a cabinet meeting reforms are needed on the railways as nationwide strikes cause major travel disruption across the UK. With 80% of train services cancelled, Boris Johnson warned commuters they must stay the course in the face of what he's calling unnecessary aggravation. More walkouts are planned for Thursday and Saturday, but the knock-on effects will be felt all week. Boris Johnson is urging unions and rail bosses to get back around the table to resolve the dispute.
We need the union barons to sit down with Network Rail and the train companies and get on with it. And we need, I'm afraid, everybody, and I say this to the country as a whole, we need to get ready to stay the course.
RMT General Secretary Mick Lynch says members will overcome whatever obstacles the government puts in their way.
This is a lawful dispute under the legislation that the Tories brought in themselves. And every time we meet the hurdles and break the thresholds that they brought in, they want to change the law again. We've got the most draconian laws in Western Europe and in any democracy, in fact, anti-trade union laws. Whatever they bring in, we'll meet that challenge and we'll continue to campaign. And if necessary, we'll take effective industrial action when we need to.
In other news, a fire which broke out on the 12th floor of a high-rise residential block in West London is now under control. The fire brigade says 6 residents were led to safety via an internal staircase. Other residents who weren't directly affected were advised to stay in their flats. The The building is close to Grenfell Tower, which was destroyed by fire 5 years ago, killing 72 people. TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound is 1.230 to the dollar and 1.164 to the euro. And the price of gold currently stands at £1,494 and 10 pence per ounce.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for physical investment.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation. We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you. And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good morning. It's just coming up to 39 minutes after 11 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. This is To The Point. I'm Nana Akwet. This is Mercy Moroki, and we are live with you this morning.
Yes, now some schools that were marked down by Ofsted inspectors in their annual reports were told part of the reason was their lack of gender identity classes that led to the downgrade, according to findings reported in The Telegraph.
Now, comments on the lack of classes on gender diversity or gender reassignment were amongst the reasons given in at least 4 schools to justify their inadequate or required improvement grades.
Yes, well, as you can imagine, this has led to Ofsted inspectors being accused of pushing political agendas on schools. And here to discuss more of this is Head of Education for the campaign group Don't Divide Us, Alka Seagal Cuthbert. Thank you for joining us this morning. Surely, a school's rating from Ofsted has to be on the quality of their teaching in math, English, science, on the quality of education they're getting as a whole. What's gender identity got to do with it, all of it?
Well, hello, good morning. It's got very little to do with educational quality if you're talking about education in an established sense that most people understand it, a liberal education based on the subjects that you've just said. But I think what's happened, and this is that we can see happening in schools and also in the way Ofsted's own kind of focus has shifted from its original one when it was set up in 1992, is that it's moved away from a focus on academic qualities, academic achievements, and more onto the kind of softer, less easy to define questions of personal development, and most importantly, values. And when it comes to values, this is where you kind of open up a huge area of contestation when you have some schools wanting to pursue and inculcate values that maybe many parents don't agree with, and it has not been publicly scrutinised, and often it's not even, known to parents, until they happen to come across this by chance. And I think this is reflected in Ofsted's own kind of focus, which is, when I kind of felt for them almost when I read a spokesman from them saying, we are going no further than what the government guidance tells us to do. And that's actually true, right? It is actually statutory. They have statutory duties under current legislation to teach, to make sure everybody knows about gender relationships in their school career. They have a duty for schools to teach anti-racism.
I do understand.
And the problem is...
Yeah, sorry to interrupt you. I do understand sort of gender relationships in terms of, you do have to teach children what a good relationship looks like, what a healthy relationship looks like. But looking at this Telegraph report, it says in one case, Ofsted rated a school inadequate, which was the lowest mark, and it cited the lack of gender reassignment teaching as one of those reasons. I mean, why do children between age 3 to 16 need to be learning about gender reassignment surgery?
They absolutely don't. The only people that think they do are a minority of educators who are very ideologically committed. It's often very politically partisan. They're playing out politics in classrooms with issues like this. Of course, they don't need to know. And similarly with racism and anti-racism, it's one thing to teach these issues in an impartial way, which is where you have to properly present a range of views, opposing views, not just one particular approach. That's a very different thing to schools having a whole week of celebrating gender identity or celebrating, committed to dealing with your white privilege or things like that. Those aren't really educational things. They're about changing cultural values. They're about changing the very way children think, and often it's at odds with the values of their parents. It's deeply divisive, and it's very anti-educational. And I think there really does need to be greater accountability for bodies like Ofsted that have such tremendous influence. They have huge influence amongst all our schools. And yet, nobody really knows this criteria. There's so much room for different interpretations. Where in some schools it can be fine, and in other schools what's being taught and the way it's being taught is really shocking.
Well, Alka, I mean, the thing is, though, but sort of values, as you said, they're kind of subjective, aren't they? They're personal. People have different... So you've got these subjective values of maybe the teacher or somebody else or being sort of spread across. And then, obviously, they're talking about teaching gender when there are now 76 of them, apparently, but that was the last time I looked, and a lot of them are actually made up. Why do you think this is happening in schools? Because I just simply don't get it. I thought maybe it's because they took religious education out of the curricula. I don't get it. Why do you think this is happening?
Well, it's funny you should say that, but, I think in some cases, some of the really kind of schools where they're using material that's quite blatantly activist is coming in through bodies like the National Association of Religious Education. They're not immune from the effects of identity politics either. As to why it's happening, I think, it's very easy to just dismiss all this as the outcome of a minority of activists or a takeover. And that might be true to an extent, but more fundamentally, it's because we've just lost any kind of consensus on the purpose of what education should be. Should it be to educate our children, to introduce them to a world of ideas through which they develop their imagination and their intellect? Or is education to produce citizens who have a definition of what it is to be respectful of gender identity, or observe their white privilege and atone for it, or feel oppressed, and all those kinds of very formulaic, rigid very unfree kind of ways of thinking. And it's very worrying that some schools seem to be following this second way rather than the first way.
Be heightening intolerance, actually, and actually dividing people and doing the very thing that they're trying to do. They're talking about inclusivity, but it's excluding so many people. It's ridiculous. Alka, it's been really good to talk to you. That is Alka Sigel-Cuthbert. She's from a campaign group, Don't Divide Us.
Yes, and I'm sure many people would prefer her to be teaching their kids rather than some of these teachers talking about this gender identity to kids. And they certainly don't need to be teaching about gender reassignment. Who
cares? I don't want to know, but I don't care, you know.
Yeah, but kids don't need to know about chopping bits off to change your gender, surely.
Because kids don't know what they want anyway, and a lot of adults don't either, so there's no point doing that to them. Well, today, though, it is the summer solstice, which is obviously the longest day of the year, and down here in London, there'll be, 16 hours and 39 minutes of daylight, whilst those all the way up in the Shetlands will just see 4 minutes shy of 19 hours of daylight today.
That's why our southwest of England reporter Jeff Moody was at Stonehenge this morning to view the celebrations and spoke to someone from English Heritage about the festivities.
And I'm here joined by Heather Sabir. Heather, what a great atmosphere here it's been. How many people have been here, do you know?
We think around about 6,000 people this year.
And people watching on live stream as well?
Yes, we've been live streaming, so there were over 100,000 watched the sunset last night, and then around about 5,000 this morning.
That's an incredible number, isn't it?
Sorry, 50,000 this morning. It was 50,000, yeah.
Why do people come here to watch the sun go up?
They come for all sorts of different reasons. Some people just come to have a good time because it's open access to the stones. But for a lot of people, it's a very emotional, spiritual time. There are a lot of groups, there are Druid groups and pagan groups, and they come to actually perform ceremonies. You can hear drumming in the background here. So there's lots of different reasons people come, but very often it's just to enjoy the fact it's the longest day of the year and the weather's been very kind.
And it's one of the only times that you can actually get this close to the stones, isn't it? I've driven past Stonehenge so many times, but actually walking in amongst the stones, it is something very special, isn't it?
It is very special. And 4 times a year we allow the public to come in, so the winter solstice, the summer solstice, and then the equinoxes in between. And it's partly because those groups do want to have their spiritual ceremonies, but we want to be able to welcome people in, because English Heritage is a charity and that's part of our remit to welcome people into the stones. And this is one way of allowing them in, but just at certain times of the year, because they look very robust, but actually we do need to protect them quite a lot, believe it or not, because the stones have got a lot of features on them that you can't see with the naked eye. So that's why the rest of the year we're quite careful about what happens to them.
Thank you very much indeed, Heather. Well, as I...
Oh, wow, that's come to an abrupt end. I was quite enjoying that. Yeah,
well, at least it's in the sun, eh?
I wanted to see the stones, though. I thought I was going to show some.
Yeah. So do you find those? I don't find those that fascinating, I have to admit. Stonehenge.
Really? I just love to see it.
Can't be the only one. But anyway, let us know what you think. GBViews at gbnews.uk. But now some other good news, other than the fact it's the start of summer. The Duke of Cambridge turns 40 today, and the future heir to the throne continues to use his status to highlight causes he cares about.
Our royal reporter, Cameron Walker, has this report.
Conservationist, father and future king. Prince William is Britain's most popular royal after his grandmother, the Queen. For an ancient institution with a motto of never complain, never explain. The Duke of Cambridge has been a pioneer in modernising the monarchy he will one day lead. Ian Pelham-Turner was one of the first photographers to take official pictures of the baby William in 1982. Royal rules dictated he only had minutes to capture the perfect shot and wasn't allowed to speak to parents Charles and Diana. The Princess of Wales was unaware her son's teething ring was blocking her face.
I made a noise like I was dying. And Diana turned round and she knew I was breaking protocol, but I wasn't, because I wasn't actually speaking. As she moved the teething ring, William went to grab the teething ring, and in 1/60th of a second, that really made my career. I've been living off that picture for the past 40-odd years since.
The Duke of Cambridge has a long-standing passion for protecting wildlife, and one of his first royal patronages in 2005 was the conservation charity Tusk. Before the charity's existence, up to 100,000 elephants a year were killed by poachers in the illegal ivory trade. Charles Mayhew, MBE, is Tusk's co-founder and CEO. He's worked closely with Prince William and has travelled to Africa with him to help protect wildlife.
From the moment he became patron, we saw a significant rise in our revenue, but much more importantly than that, his ability to promote the work, not only of Tusk, but actually the wider conservation movement, and using his patronage of Tusk as a means to do that and to get some very sort of powerful messages across.
William is the future of the monarchy, but the future of the planet worries him. His new global prize for the environment was launched, the most ambitious and prestigious of its kind, designed to find 50 solutions to repair our planet over the next 10 years.
It's a hugely ambitious target, but I do think the positivity and that finding ways through this is better than saying, you know, it's all doom and gloom, we're all going to, you know, perish. I think we've got to harness our ingenuity and our ability to invent.
The prince's passion perhaps stems from his grandfather and father's work over the decades. Having a family of his own gives him the opportunity to inspire the next generation to look after the planet. But the Duke's main duty is supporting the Queen, and her mobility issues means William represents her at more engagements. Good practice for a monarch of the 21st century. Cameron Walker, GB News.
Well, a happy birthday to Prince William, eh?
On the longest day of the year as well. That's quite a good day to have a birthday on. It's still like a never-ending day.
Yeah, exactly. Well, let's take you through, to finish off the show, some of the other headlines of the day. You might have missed some of the lighter ones, it's fair to say. Get this, a 23-year-old woman has claimed she was barred from boarding a bus in South London because she was carrying a bucket of fried chicken.
Well, it can smell it, can't it? I mean, I hate it when people start eating whilst I'm sitting in public transport. Now, her name's Grace Aiden, and she said that she was worried about her safety after her bus driver told her to get outside or get rid of her fried chicken, saying it would cause a stink to other passengers.
Well, she said it was unsafe to do so at midnight.
Oh, that's not fair.
When she boarded the bus. So she marched upstairs instead, leaving passengers to beg the driver to continue the journey despite his protest. What a load of
well, I think
what to do about nothing. Yeah, you can't chuck a girl out onto the streets
not at midnight. That's not on.
Fried chicken.
That's not on. I mean, that's not fair. If you're not allowed to eat on the bus, it should say no food on the bus. If it doesn't say that, then that's tough.
I do find it rude though when you're on a long journey, like on a train, and somebody gets out something really like fish. You know, you can't eat fish. I think there are foods that should be banned from eating on public transport, like fish.
I think eating on public transport should actually be banned, apart from if it's for feeding a small child, that's all, or breastfeeding or something like
and
that.
Also, I wouldn't like it because it would just make me hungry because I do love fried chicken. So I'd be annoyed for this person making me hungry. You don't seem like a woman who would feast on a bucket of fried chicken.
I wouldn't feast on a bucket of fried chicken on a bus, but at home I eat like an animal. Chicken bones out the window. No, that's not true. Now, those of us who managed to actually arrive in Spain this summer, amid all the travel chaos, will have to beware of the new laws aimed at British holidaymakers.
Yes, well, for instance, lawmakers in the Spanish city of Vigo have announced that anyone found relieving themselves in the sea or on the beach will be fined £625 for the, quote, infringement of hygiene and sanitary regulations.
Well, how can you catch somebody? You have to be... Spain have also threatened fines for those who forget to cover up after leaving the beach with topless and bikini wearers at the risk of fines for inappropriate dressing. I mean, how can you honestly catch somebody if they're, OK, maybe if they're doing a number 2 in the sea, that's different. You might catch a waffle to that. But,
wow.
But that could have been there before you got there anyway. But if someone's having a wee in the sea... It's not
but this
really
is also why I do not
silly,
go swimming in public swimming pools and swim in the sea. Yeah. Partly because I can't actually swim really, and I don't want to drown. But I don't want people's fluids and solids floating around.
Well, one time there was this really stinky boy at school. There's always one that smells a bit funny. And he always blow his nose, and there was this huge snot thing floating around in the pool at school.
Too much for me.
And I can tell you what,
I
remember
too much for me.
What happened, but I won't tell you what happened. But anyway,
I don't want to know.
nice.
No.
But that has put me off swimming for life.
Yeah, fuck off.
I would.
I want to gag now. Well, now look, tomorrow is Wednesday, and a little reminder before we go that every Wednesday we hand over our show to you. We want you to get in touch and tell us the stories you want covering tomorrow, because that's exactly what we're going to do. The whole show will be dedicated to the topics you want to see covered. So get in touch. Email in your suggestions to thepoint@gbnews.uk. That's to thepoint@gbnews.uk, and we will be discussing those tomorrow. But that's it from us.
Yes, that's right here at To The Point. Don't go away, because up next it is The Briefing with Gloria. Have a good day.
Hello again, I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. Warm sunny spells for much of England and Wales today. Cloudier for Scotland and Northern Ireland, with showers for some, but for the vast majority it is dry because of a large area of high pressure sitting in the mid-Atlantic, stopping any deep lows or weather fronts from arriving. But a couple of weak features are just about sneaking into the top of the UK, and that's why we've started with cloud and some rain in places for Scotland, Northern Ireland and the far north of England. The rain largely disappears by the afternoon, but one or two showers are possible for Aberdeenshire, Angus, Perth and Kinross, and for the far north of England over the Pennines. To the south of that, plenty of sunshine.